Thanks so much for that introduction, and thank you guys so much for coming to our talk. My name is Penny. These are my friends Chris and Susie, and we are very excited to talk to y'all today about a topic that is very important to us, and that is building a united grassroots movement for pressure campaigns. But before we do that, we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit, just so you know a little bit more about who's talking to you all today. My name is Penny. I got my start in grassroots activism around 2018. I mainly started doing outreach in general, kind of vegan activism. And then a couple years into my activism journey, I realized that there was something missing from the animal rights movement. And that was really a way for other activists to get connected and share experiences with one another and work with one another if you weren't like a part of an organization. So that really inspired me and some of my friends to start our group, Activism Collective. And that really started as just a place for activists to get together, network, to share their experiences with one another, to provide mentorship. A couple years into that journey, another group was forming around that time, Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade, and they introduced me to a concept called pressure campaigning. And a light bulb kind of went off in my head, and I realized that all these grassroots networks that we had been connecting with all over the world could start doing effective pressure campaigning, effective activism right here, right now in their communities. And that was really exciting to me. So that kind of laid the groundwork for what AAC is today. A little bit about AAC, you can kind of think of us as the funnel for activism. We recruit people into the movement and then disseminate them to whatever campaigns make the most sense for them. We aim to equip activists with the skills, knowledge, and support necessary to effectively fight for animals. And then, of course, something that's very important to us is providing community and connecting them with the global animal rights network. How do we do this? I'm going to talk more about specifics later on in this presentation, but we want to empower activists through local activism. Local activism and local communities are super important to all of our orgs. And then we always take a one-on-one approach with activists. All of this is done with the aim to make our activists independent, autonomous, and decentralized, and capable of being effective campaigners participating in the most impactful campaigns happening for animals right now.
Hi, everyone. My name is Susie. I'm the Executive Director of Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade, also known as CAFT. And I've been involved with CAFT since around 2024. And I've been the executive director since 2025 when we became an official registered charity. I started getting involved in grassroots activism around 2021. My first campaign was actually a CAFT anti-fur campaign in New York City. It was a loud protest, it was rowdy, it was angry, and I was just immediately drawn to it. So yeah, I started my own local group in New York City. We were working on CAFT campaigns like many local anti-fur groups were doing at the time. And it kind of just went from there. So as of today, CAFT is made up of 3 staff, myself, one of the co-founders, and another campaigner. And our mission is to end the fur industry. And our method is to dismantle the fur retail market, forcing one company after another to abandon fur until the industry collapses. So our campaigns are decentralized. That means anyone, anywhere can get involved. There's no need to ask for permission. And CAFT's leadership, we do the research, we pick the targets, we negotiate with targets, disseminate information. And while we only have 3 staff, the reality is that CAFT represents grassroots groups in over 50 international cities. These are boots-on-the-ground activists who are taking actions every day, every week for our campaigns, and they organize around 400 actions a year. So together, we have secured fur-free policies from 18 companies affecting over 100 brands, and we've almost completely gotten rid of fur from luxury fashion. So why are we focusing on fur? So the fur industry right now is at its lowest point in history. We, for the most part, already have the public on our side. I think like most people can understand that breeding and killing millions of animals for, luxury fashion for a piece of clothing is just completely unjustifiable. In 2020, there were around 120 million animals killed for fur. In 2024, that number went down to 20 million. So we have an opportunity right now, if we stay focused on the fur industry, to completely wipe out this industry. We can put in the final round. Good, next slide. So our motto is animal liberation will not be achieved by asking nicely. So there are plenty of organizations that, work with companies through corporate engagement. They get policies, the nice way, and they're doing great. No shade to them, but that's just not us. We don't just ask for a fur-free policy. When we campaign, we demand it. And if we don't get it, we will unleash the entire full force of the grassroots movement on this company. And we're also playing to our strengths. The companies that we campaign against, they have endless amounts of power and money. Our power lies in our tactics, our people, and our dedication. And we also sort of lean into the reputation that precedes us. For example, right after we won the Marc Jacobs campaign, he called us bullies on his Instagram page. And the New York Times wrote an article that made us seem a little unhinged, a little crazy. And that negative media attention affected our next target, which was Max Mara. So we found out that they immediately sent out an internal memo to all of their staff, letting them know what to do if anti-fur protesters showed up to their door. So we won Max Mara 3 months later. So, yes. And a lot of people in this room, some people in this room participated in that campaign. So we run decentralized, high-energy, relentless, hyper-focused pressure campaigns. So our protests are loud, they're disruptive, confrontational, and that's kind of like the whole point. We're there to make the environment very uncomfortable. The animals on fur farms don't get any peace and quiet, and neither should the people who are signing off on their abuse. So at the end of the day, we really just want these companies to know that dealing with us is just simply not worth it. On-the-ground actions and the ability to mobilize quickly are central to our campaigns. Whenever we launch a new campaign, we immediately contact the cities that have a store or an office, and we ask them to launch a protest so that when we actually launch the campaign, there's a bunch of cities protesting like that same day or that same week. The week that we launched the Rick Owens campaign, which was the last campaign that we won, there were protests in New York City, Los Angeles, London, and then that was the first weekend. We won that campaign 5 days later. So aside from ending an entire industry, our vision and our goal is to build a grassroots movement that is fighting to win, not simply fighting to fight. So our campaigns serve as a training ground where activists can really build their skills and gain the knowledge to run pressure campaigns. And because our campaigns are decentralized, it allows organizers and activists to take real ownership of their city or their group's role. So CAFT is building a movement on more than just an idea. We're building a foundation on the results that we accomplish together.
Hi, everyone. I'm Chris. I'm sorry for my voice. I was at a protest last night, and it's fucked. I'm the CEO and founder of ICAW, the International Council for Animal Welfare. And ICAW exists for exactly one reason, and that is to reduce as much animal suffering as we possibly can by winning and waging aggressive campaigns against the world's largest food companies. So that means with every dollar we spend, with every minute of activist time that we're asking for, we want to help literally as many animals as we possibly can with the most effective actions and the most impactful campaigns for reducing animal suffering. Currently, we have two major campaigns. Our first campaign is to completely abolish battery cages from the face of the earth. Battery cages obviously are one of the most horrific forms of factory farming. Animals are trapped in tiny cages. They can't even turn around. They can't spread their wings. This is happening to hundreds of millions of animals all over the world. And one of our primary goals is completely eradicating this form of factory farming from the earth. Our other major campaign is to improve the lives of the hundreds of billions of shrimp that are farmed every single year. This is the #1 farmed animal on the planet. And we have a corporate ask that we've been campaigning for, which asks for two things of companies. First, they commit to completely banning a horrific practice called eye stalk ablation. This is a horrific mutilation in the shrimp industry where they literally cut the eyes off of brooding shrimp, mother shrimp. They cut their eyes off so they're partially blinded for their entire lives. And also to adopt standards which will reduce prolonged suffocation at the end of a shrimp's life when it's being slaughtered. These are incremental changes, obviously. I don't think anybody in the room is like, that's the end goal. Shrimp suffer less. Obviously, not me neither. I'm an animal liberation activist, and our theory of change at ICAW is part of an animal liberation theory of change. And if you think about it this way, for as long as we live in a society that has capitalism, the companies that control the fate of the vast majority of animals in this world are going to be the world's largest food companies, period. Governments play a role, but the reality is food companies control the vast majority of animals in the world. And if we can get these food companies to start taking these steps, to start caring about the animals in their supply chain, to start making purchasing decisions, start increasing the cost of animal products purely because the lives of the animals matter to them, this now sets us on a path where we can move companies along a chain, helping more and more and more animals, reducing the number of animals they're purchasing, and ultimately, in the future, if we're successful, completely eliminating the use of animals altogether. So at ICAW, if we think about it this way, if we think this is an animal liberation theory of change, every one of these wins, despite the fact that it's incremental progress, despite the fact that it's not the end goal, if this is part of a path that leads us to animal liberation, every tactic in the toolkit should be used to win these campaigns. And we've been particularly focused this year on combining I've been working on animal welfare campaigns for the majority of my adult life. For over a decade, I've been working on animal welfare campaigns against food companies. And this year, we've been very focused on combining both successful tactics from those previous campaigns, which generally did not rely on people power. They were mostly digital tactics and various things that have worked really well in past campaigns, combining those with tactics that have never been used before in the history of animal welfare campaigning, which is radical grassroots tactics. And overall, in my experience, I worked at some of the largest animal welfare groups in the world, leading strategy for their corporate campaigns. And after a decade of doing this, what I realized was we had just lost teeth entirely. Like, our opponents were not scared of us anymore. They didn't feel like they had to actually fulfill any of these commitments that we had secured. They did not care about our campaigns. They were not impactful. And this is why I left. This is why I started ICAW. Partly because I want to win campaigns, but also partly because I aim to shift the Overton window on all animal welfare campaigns, on what's acceptable within an animal welfare campaign. And if this is an animal liberation theory of change, then we should be doing everything. We should be fighting tooth and nail to win these policies. We should be campaigning like we give a fuck whether we win or lose. And I think this year has shown, not only ICAW, but frankly, all the animal welfare groups across the movement, you can see the tone has changed and campaigns are back on the table, serious campaigning. And finally, one of the major goals at ICAW is to build a mass movement of pressure campaigners working across multiple issues. Not only animal welfare campaigns, but also ending fur, also ending the foie gras industry, ending vivisection. People need the tools to win pressure campaigns, and we need to be working together. This is probably happening right now. If you think about the largest animal abusers in the world out there, I think they're hoping that animal rights activists are sitting around having erroneous philosophical debates about what we should be asking for, whether or not we should do this ask, or how we should campaign for these things, rather than just working together and fighting to achieve these things that we know help animals. And I think for ICAW, this is a major part of our work, working within the grassroots and uniting people so we can win together rather than sort of fighting against each other. So that takes me back to March 2025, just about a year ago. I was invited to a very strange event hosted by Wayne Shung, who heads the Simple Heart, as well as Coalition to Abolish the Fur Trade and Animal Activism Collective. And I had honestly had no interest in going to this event. I was invited by a friend, and then I was really tired, and I was like, oh God, I gotta go to this thing. And I thought, I'm gonna show up to this event, and there's all these people who are working on abolition campaigns or whatever, and they're all gonna hate me because I've been working on welfare campaigns. And I thought, I know everything about campaigning. I'm not gonna learn anything from these grassroots activists. I could not have been more wrong. On the very first day of the summit, I went to my first ever fur protest. So that was about a year ago. And I thought, I've been to a protest before. I know how it goes. We're all going to hold signs. We're going to stand outside. We're going to outreach the public. We got about 80 people at this conference, so we're going to get a great photo op that we can then send to the company afterwards to demonstrate people actually care. This was not the tenor of this protest at all. Rather, we walk up to the store, Loro Piana, which is a subsidiary of LVMH, which we will be talking about later. Sirens blaring on about 40 megaphones. People screaming through their megaphones, spit flying at the windows. People are chalking all over the sidewalks, squirting blood. People are throwing what I now know are called personal alarms onto awnings and into trash cans. And I was completely taken aback. I thought, what the fuck is going on? And then I looked at the people inside of Loro Piana. And every single one of those employees, every single customer going in there was impacted. Not by a broader campaign, but by this individual protest. And immediately a light bulb went off. This is what protests are supposed to look like. It doesn't matter what you're campaigning for. It doesn't matter what issue you're focusing on. This is how you protest. Very next day, same routine. We went to an Omni Hotels. This was a major target, the largest foie gras campaign of all time at that time. Same thing, except this time we went inside the hotel. People screaming, megaphones on, sirens on. The hotel guests, the hotel staff are scattering all around the hotel. And this was obviously like an impactful thing and was gonna happen. They were gonna mention this protest specifically to executives at the company. And then finally, just in time, I had learned some protesting skills, and we went to go do ICAW's first ever, impactful protest. And we showed up at the Marriott headquarters in downtown Bethesda. I thought, none of these people that I met the previous days at the fur and foie gras protests are going to be willing to show up for this campaign. It's a welfare campaign. Nobody cares. Could not have been more wrong about that either. Everyone showed up. So we had a ton of people outside the Marriott headquarters, exact same energy. People screaming through megaphones. Activists are dipping their hands in blood and throwing up bloody handprints across the walls of these giant glass windows outside of Marriott's headquarters. And this, at that moment, I think is the most impactful single animal welfare protest that had ever been held. And right from there, I think all three of our groups realized we can achieve a lot more if we all work together, if we all pool our collective resources, and rather than focusing on an individual issue or an individual theory of change, we focus on building a movement that knows how to run pressure campaigns and how to win for animals.
All right. Well, after we all met each other and knew that we liked each other, what we wanted to do was nail down 3 core tenets of our coalition, things that were all very important to us. And that was local activism centered. All of our groups are local activism centered. Choosing winnable campaigns is very important to us. And building locally with the goal to win globally. I'll talk more about those. Local-centered activism, or local activism-centered movement, super important to all of our groups. The goal here is really to, AAC helps activists set up their own independent groups. Activists apply to our programs, and then we teach them the skills necessary to be campaigners in their own right. Teach them how to do effective target selection, research, movement sustainability, how to recruit locally. The goal is not to have, CAFT Manchester or AAC London. It's to have Fur Free UK, Rage London, groups that are independent and operating, which is what's best for them in their communities. And this doesn't just come from something that's best for all of our groups. It comes from the general philosophy that animal liberation will not be achieved by one group or one person. It's achieved by all of you, by thousands of activists all across the world that are harder to oppress and harder to identify. And when activists are acting in the best interest of the animals, not in the best interest of a group or an organization. And through this, we've managed to recruit hundreds of activists all across the world, over 50 cities worldwide, and to top it all off, over 150 local wins. So these groups are not just toiling away at a campaign to keep themselves busy until they can get plugged into one of the global campaigns. They're making tangible change for animals right here in their own communities.
Yeah, so choosing winnable campaigns. Part of the reason our coalition has been so successful is because we don't start a campaign that we know that we can't win. That's probably one of the most important pieces of advice that I give to activists when they ask me about starting a campaign. And it's central to our goal as a coalition, whether it's a fur, a cage-free, or a foie gras campaign, make sure what you're asking is achievable, impactful, and can be done with a limited amount of time and resources, as much as possible. Take, for example, a fur shop or a butcher shop. Asking an owner-run small business to shut down entirely is rarely feasible. These owners are very invested in their business. They're resistant to pressure, and a legal street protest campaign can consume an enormous amount of time and energy. And it's for, a limited impact for one brick and mortar store. Compare that to a campaign like Marc Jacobs. Fur represents a small portion of their business, a few pieces in a collection. So is it worth it to them to deal with the storm of a grassroots pressure campaign, or is it easier to just drop fur? The answer is they always give in. With the right target and the right ask, they always come around. And now you're probably asking, well, why are you going after a company if fur is just a small part of their business? So CAFT focuses on influential designers that are culturally significant. So when Marc Jacobs or Rick Owens go for free, it's in the news. The entire fashion industry hears about it, and it signals to the fashion industry that fur is really losing cultural relevance, and that's what we want. It makes it easier for us to then go after bigger targets. For years, luxury fashion has driven the demand for fur. But now, pelt prices are low, they can't sell their product, the industry is suffering, and that's because the demand is simply not there. Luxury fashion is finally turning its back on fur. And with each campaign and each win, our movement grows. Activists trust our strategy and our campaigns, and they're willing to work on them. They just went out and protested a luxury designer once a week for 2 months, and they played a role in making a billion-dollar company go fur free. They're seeing the tangible results of their activism, and I think that keeps people engaged, it keeps them active and effective, and it certainly did for me.
And finally, the focus of our movement building is around building local communities, getting more numbers out to protest, strengthening them, giving them local communities the skills they need to succeed in their own autonomous organizations. We also invite these groups to participate in global campaigns so we can have an even greater impact. And so, for example, for our campaign against Marriott International, we've received literally hundreds of submissions of local groups around the world taking action against Marriott, holding protests outside their hotels, disrupting their hotels. And literally, just by virtue of doing these protests, we are bringing this company, a $25 billion company, the largest hotel chain in the world, to its knees. We know this is a top priority for the entire company, and it's purely just because of the actions of grassroots activists all around the world being willing to participate in global campaigns as a collective. And a huge number of the wins of this coalition have been the result purely of local groups acting together and focusing on the same campaign targets.
All right, so we talked about our important tenets. Now we're going to talk about tactics. So what do we actually do? First thing I want to talk about are protests. This is really the cornerstone of what we do. This is what we encourage all of our groups to do. Baseline. Protests are legal in almost every single city in the world. They're certainly legal here in the UK. And our protests are loud, in your face. We hit them directly where it'll hurt our targets. And they're super legal. It's a really low barrier to entry for new activists. Just yesterday, we were outside of a Marriott, and we were doing a completely legal street protest, public sidewalk, and the managers were pissed. They were literally begging the cops to do something to move us along, and the cops were like, no, it's their legal right to be here. We're not going to move along, and they ended up telling the managers, just go inside if you're so disrupted. Just go back inside. So there's nothing they can do, and it surely bothers our targets.
Next, very similar to a protest, is a disruption. Basically, you're taking that same energy from the street and bringing it inside the hotel. This does carry a little bit of a greater risk. You're trespassing inside of a hotel. There's risk of violence. There's risk of law enforcement taking some sort of action. So it's something to be careful about. However, in particular cases, I think this is a really strong tactic to use. Say, for example, you're disrupting a speaking event, like we did last year with when Marriott International CEO was speaking on a panel with all the other major CEOs of every single hotel chain in the world. And we brought about 50 activists into this event, disrupted the talk. So every single CEO of every single major hotel chain was sitting there watching us scream and fight for them to finally follow through on their cage-free commitments. And singularly, this disruption shifted the entire hotel industry. Like we saw immediately after that, every major hotel chain in the world, finally, after a decade of committing to do something, taking that seriously and taking real steps to fulfill their commitment. So this can be a very powerful thing, taking the protest inside and disrupting your targets.
Yes, the home protest. So this is a tactic that we use frequently-ish in the United States as one of the final escalations for a campaign. So if a company is resistant to protests, disruptions, and maybe they have like a secondary or tertiary target that doesn't have really good leverage, then we move into home demos. They're perfectly legal. I know they're not legal everywhere. I know they're not legal in the UK. But it is in the US, like any other protest, we're on the public sidewalk. They do elicit very strong reactions from the target and oftentimes from the neighbors. These executives, they can ignore our emails, they can ignore our protests at stores or offices, but when we show up outside of their house with the same energy as like a store demo, it becomes very hard for them to ignore us. They almost immediately start paying attention. And I'll give you an example of how effective this tactic can be on a secondary target. So during the Conde Nast campaign, we launched a secondary campaign against Mattel, which is a toy company, because Roger Lynch, the CEO of Conde Nast, was a board member there. So we had activists protesting American Girl doll stores, as crazy as that sounds. But towards the end of the campaign, when we moved into home demos, some activists also started home demoing the board members of Mattel. So we had activists in Washington, D.C. They protested the home of a board member of Mattel. This is someone that has nothing to do with the fur industry, but they have a direct line of communication to Roger Lynch. So secondary and tertiary targets are also a way for us to cause tension amongst business relationships, and we use it as leverage. So the Mattel board member, can immediately call up Roger Lynch and be like, why the hell are these crazy people screaming outside of my house about fur? Make it stop now. If Roger Lynch values his board seat, which, we think he did because he was making $200,000 a year just for attending a few meetings once a year, then he'll do something. Within a week of that protest happening, we got our second cease and desist letter from Conde Nast, which specifically mentioned that protest. We ignored it, of course, and continued protesting. And then a week later, we won the campaign. So 20 cities of grassroots volunteers just got fur removed from Vogue magazine, the most influential fashion publication, in a matter of 9 months. While home protests are one of the most effective tactics, it is definitely reserved for the final stages of a campaign, when we've exhausted all other avenues, and the threat of repression is already on the table, but the impact of the win outweighs that. So it's led to some of the biggest wins for CAFT, including Marc Jacobs, Max Mara, and Conde Nast.
And lastly, I just want to say, through hundreds of protests this year, our coalition has only faced a few arrests, but this is grassroots activism, and shit happens. However, I just want to, one point I want to make is, at least within our coalition, we have a wide network of legal support. We're connected to many lawyers and people who can help us with these sorts of things in many different countries. So if you're being asked to participate or you're choosing to participate in a CAFT campaign, an ICAW campaign, an AAC campaign, we will do our absolute best to support you if anything happens. And we should not fear repression. If we're winning, if we're defeating our opponents, we should expect repression, and I think we should simply just be prepared for that.
All right, now I'm going to talk about the programs that we have. So this is your opportunity to learn how to get involved. If anything that we've said so far is of interest to you, this is how you can get involved. So there's going to be a bunch of QR codes on the screen. So we're going to want to get those phones out. Yes. The first program AAC offers is our mentorship program. This was our first program that we offered. This really speaks to our one-on-one approach with activists. If you scan this QR code, you'll sign up on a form that asks questions about like what kind of activism you want to do, where you're located, and you'll get paired with one of our, we have like nearly 100 mentors all across the world. These are experienced animal rights activists. And this program is best for people who don't really know what they want to do yet. Our other program, the Pressure Campaigns program, this is the program you want to sign up to if you want to learn how to start your own local group, start organizing pressure campaigns that move the needle forward for animals. This is the program for you. Another cool program we do is our Convergences. These are 10-day events in a city where activists from all around the world converge together and do back-to-back activism. We do those protests, disruptions, home demos we were talking about. And this is a great place to just meet activists from all around the world and form lasting connections. Another great thing about the Convergences is oftentimes they coincide with an existing campaign. So we use this great movement mobilization that we're able to achieve here to further a campaign. I did have a video I wanted to play, but we are tight on time, so I'm going to skip it. Yeah, it's like 5 minutes long. You want to do it? If we okay. The people have spoken.
Shame on you! Shame on you! Wipe the smile off your face! Shame on you! Wipe the smile off your face! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you! Shame on you!
I don't think you know what the book is about.
It has nothing to do with your book! It has nothing to do with your book. It's about Mark Jacobs, not your book. Choose another store.
Abusers, shame on you! Shame on you for what you do! Abusers, shame on you! Shame on you for what you do! 1, 2, 3, 4! Open up the cage door! Special laws to liberate! Look cute! Look at you! All your jobs that have to be done! We will never compromise! All your jobs that have to be done! We will never compromise! NYPD, arrest animal activists! What do we do? Stand up like that! We will not be waited out, we will not be suppressed, and we will never go away until you drop fur. fight for it? Did we get it?
This is history being made.
Well, I don't know about you, but I am fired up after that video. If that was exciting to you or looked like something you want to be a part of, I've got great news. We are having a London convergence in just a couple weeks. This will be our first convergence outside of the US. So if you scan that QR code, you'll register and you can be a part of some of the stuff we just saw.
Scan it. And if for some godforsaken reason you have decided to not go to the London convergence in 2 weeks, I cannot possibly imagine a reason why. We've got good news for you. There's no excuse not to do activism this summer. Our coalition is going to be coming back to Europe in August with a van full of some of the most experienced grassroots activists in the world, touring across Europe in cities like London, Paris, Milan. If you're interested in joining the Resistance Against Greed and Exploitation Rage Tour this summer, scan that QR code. You can sign up for updates. We should have the schedule released within the next few weeks.
And last and certainly not least, we are going to talk about our wins. We've been talking about it a lot, so now we're going to get more into detail. This is just a visual representation of all the local wins our local chapters have been able to achieve since we started doing this work in late 2024. These have been mostly getting restaurants to drop foie gras, but most importantly, these are local wins that our groups achieved after sometimes just one protest that's tangibly moving the needle forward for animals.
Yeah, so since 2020, we've secured fur-free policies from over 18 companies. I mean, we started out small. The first campaign only had 3 cities working on it. It was one in 14 days. Our campaigns just keep getting bigger and bigger. This is the power of the grassroots movement. This is what we can achieve when we work together. I mean, these companies are worth, some of them are worth billions of dollars. And every time we get a fur-free policy, we just move on to the next, to an even bigger campaign.
And in the last 2 years, we've gotten over a dozen retailers to commit to our shrimp ask, affecting tens of billions of animals every single year, including every single major retailer here in the UK, literally every single major retailer, except one, Aldi, which we'll talk about in a minute. But still, tremendous progress, and this is largely thanks to the grassroots animal rights movement being willing to show up for campaigns like our shrimp welfare campaign. And recent news, probably people in the room who have worked on this campaign, likely one of the largest animal welfare victories of all time. Ahold Delhaize is one of the largest supermarkets in the world, finally committed to fulfilling its cage-free policy, which probably will affect 7 million animals out of cages, animals suffering in cages every single day. This is one of the first campaigns in the history of the animal welfare movement that grassroots activists committed to spending serious energy on, and this is a win for the grassroots. It is grassroots activists that made this possible. And this is demonstrable proof. Think about the last year, all the fur victories we've had, the Ahold Delhaize win, the shrimp victories. When we work together, this is what's possible.
Okay, I'll go very quick. So we have 3 current campaigns right now. So Milan Fashion Week. It's one of the big 4 fashion weeks with New York, London, Paris. New York and London are already for free. So last December, we got New York Fashion Week to go for free. Now we're going after Milan. We just held a convergence during the fashion shows in February. There was 40 activists from all over Europe that participated. We really have a lot of traction with this campaign. And through secondary targeting, we've already gotten 2 major sponsors to drop Milan Fashion Week. So there's plenty of opportunities for people to participate in this campaign. So please reach out out to me if you are interested. The second campaign is Etsy. So they are a very large e-commerce website. This is kind of like a new direction for CAFT, but if we want to defeat the fur industry, we really have to make it very hard for them to be able to sell their products anywhere. Etsy has thousands of listings with real fur, from furriers to trappers. When we win, it'll be very impactful. I think we have around 14 cities that are working on this campaign right now. There's many secondary targets, so it's got a really wide reach. I think since January, when we launched both of these campaigns, Milan and Etsy, there have been over 90 protests already, and it's only March. So the last one is LVMH. So this is going to be like the final showdown for us. LVMH is one of the largest luxury conglomerates that still sells fur. They're very powerful. It's owned by the richest man in the world, Bernard Arnault. LVMH is made up of Louis Vuitton, Fendi, Dior. They have representatives on the boards of Milan Fashion Week and Paris Fashion Week, and they pay money to the fur industry to lobby against legal bans. So everything that we're doing now is to build up to the point where we can confront LVMH and take them head on.
And two ongoing ICAW campaigns I want to mention. First is our campaign against Aldi, the final retailer here in the UK that has not committed to taking these simple actions to prevent wanton cruelty to billions of shrimp in their supply chain. One of the largest retailers in Europe. If we win this campaign, not only will it make it so that the entire UK, every single major retailer, now is committed to our ask, it also sets the stage for us to win in every single country in Europe because Aldi is operating omnipresently across the continent. So please, if you're interested in getting involved, talk to me about it. And our other campaign, Marriott International, the world's largest hotel company. Marriott committed in 2013 to go 100% cage-free globally. It is now 2026, and they're about 50%. Activists all over the world on basically every single continent other than Antarctica have been showing up to protest this fucking company. And I think every time we show up in the street, every time we disrupt one of Marriott's events, every time we want to disrupt one of their hotels, we are showing the entire food industry, not only Marriott International, we are showing the entire food industry what happens when you fuck with the animal rights movement. So please, anywhere in the world you are, there's going to be a goddamn Marriott. Talk to me if you want to show up. Anybody can participate in this campaign, and we would love to have you on our side.
All right, well, that about wraps us up for today. But if I could leave you guys with one thing, I just want to say the number one determining factor for whether or not we will achieve animal liberation is how many people we have boots on the ground doing activism for animals. So let's stop being divided and start working together and organizing today. This is how you can stay in touch with the coalition. Scan this. It'll give us your information. We'll reach out to you. But I think we're going to take some questions now. So thank you, guys.